Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Awesome, Josh. Well, thanks for joining me on the Rad Dad Show. I'm going to start the way we always do, and that's by asking, who are you?
Who am I? Who am I? I'm Josh Hager. You mean like what do I do other than being a parent?
However you want to answer that
I'm
question,
just a guy,
yeah,
just a guy trying to get by.
you're going to be
Um,
modest. You're going to be modest. I mean, Josh, you're a current member of Devo. Tell us how that came about a little bit, and yeah, what you're up to.
okay. Let's see. I actually met Devo in about 2000, no, 1997. The first time I met them, I was friends with Josh Freese at the time, still
Okay.
am. Um, and he invited me to see them at Kennywood Amusement Park. And I went backstage and got to hang out with them a little bit. That was the first time I met them. And then around 2007, I was helping Jerry he was producing a record for a female artist. And I helped engineer that and maybe track a little guitar and stuff like that and got to know him a little bit. And then around 2009, I remember my brother's an engineer, Paul Hager, and he called me and asked if I wanted to, work on some new Devo material as an engineer or assistant or whatever, however I could help. So he booked Sunset Sound, and we went in and we tracked what turned out to be some of the tracks for Something for Everybody, and those wound up getting modified later by producers and stuff. But our goal was to get it to sound like Devo 1979. Like we
Yep.
tracked to tape. Bob was playing through an amp. Like we figured out what all the mics were that were used on the kit back then. Like because we were nerds,
Yeah, yeah.
and and, uh, and it did. It sounded really, you know, the way we were hearing it. And then of course, they went off and that wound up with their Warner Brothers deal, and they wound up, modifying it with modern sound, modern producers. And I'll never forget I had a meeting later with the A&R guy that did that record, and I was in his office for something else. And I said, "Well, why did you replace Josh Freese's drums with Drum Machine?" And the guy just puts his feet up on the desk and leans back. He goes, "Well, we just thought the drums were too robotic."
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
And
Although
then
a testament to Josh's drumming, really.
right, yeah. And then I said, "Oh, you're Rod Reuter." And he goes, "Who's Rod Reuter?" Like, the guy from the movie. He goes, "Devo made movies?" Like I had no idea.
Oh man.
And that was,
I mean, yeah, this is, the major label experience, right? This is kind of what people talk about, right? It's
it
it's
is, yeah.
yeah, maybe the norm as opposed to the exception, right?
Right.
I'm just not
Definitely.
getting it. So
Yeah.
that was your intro to sort of beginning to work with Devo and getting to know those guys and being involved in that work. And then you became uh, a member
And
of the
then,
band.
yeah,
Um,
unfortunately, Bob too passed away, and they had some gigs lined up. And Jerry phoned me and he said, "Oh, can you learn 13 songs in like 2 days?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And
Absolutely.
then
Yeah.
I woke up at like 5 in the morning and I'm like, you know, practicing the songs. And then we go to play the first show, which is at the Chicago Bulls Arena
Oh, wow.
with Arcade Fire. And at that point, I didn't think I was going to be on stage because they never, they just need me to fill the parts or whatever. And right before we went on stage, like maybe 10 minutes before we went on, Jerry goes, "Oh, just try the suit on, the yellow suit."
Yep.
I tried it on and he goes, "Yep. All right, you're out on stage with us tonight." And that was the first show. And fortunately, I had kind of overstudied and I studied all the lighting cues and choreography and where they'd be and like,
Yep.
so it worked out. I was a little nervous, but and then afterwards we get off stage and they had these curtained off sort of dressing rooms and I was I just went into one of them on the left, and there, you know, I'm getting ready, undressed or whatever, and there's this lady sitting in the corner, and it turns out it's she's like, oh, she introduces herself, very nice lady, hands me her card. It's Cynthia Plastercaster.
Crazy.
She's like, do you want me to have one of my assistants? I'm like, it's my first gig. Like, I just need to unwind for him. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I'll take your card. And, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, God bless
And
her soul.
and so you've been in the band 10 years, right? It's
Yeah,
coming up on 10 years.
I think May. Yeah. So I think it's 10 years now. Yeah. A decade. I don't have a gold dome or anything, but
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to figure out if I would have seen you. So you joined May 2014. I'm trying to
2010, no, 2014. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. I saw Devo at Punk Rock Bowling, and was it 2013 or 2014? I can't remember now. If I would have seen you there, but I did see you at Punk Rock Bowling just a couple months ago in May of this year. So
Oh,
yeah,
in Vegas. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, in Vegas. So that was really cool, and got to chat with Jerry there as well, which was neat. Okay, so 10-year member of Devo, you're also a dad.
I'm also a dad of two lovely children.
Yep. And so are you able to share what your kids' names are?
Luke and Chloe. Luke is 18. He's going off to Ithaca College he got a scholarship for filmmaking. And Chloe is in high school. She's 15. And Luke has been with me full time since about 2017, 2016. And Chloe's half-time. So we share Chloe.
Got it. So there's a co-parenting situation happening there.
You can call it that, I guess.
Yeah, that definition is different in every
Yeah.
situation, right? So, well, are you able to talk about that a little bit? Like you mentioned, like Luke is living with you full time, and the reason I ask is not to, really to pry into your personal life, but really to people watch this show, listen to this show, and there's all kinds of different situations, right? There's adoption, and there's co-parenting, there's divorce, there's people dealing with death of a parent, all kinds of different combinations. Like the nuclear family, I think, is sort of like a myth, right? And so I'm sort of curious, like what your experience has been like with that, and how you have to sort of change your approach to parenting, or how it affects your approach to parenting as you go through something like that.
Yeah, that was a very difficult time, I think, for everybody. Let me see how much detail I can go into. I was in so things kind of fell apart, and then I moved out, and I was just about to walk on stage in England. I have another band at the time called Shadow Party, which is a bunch of English guys, the guys from New Order and the Verve and stuff, and myself and Denise from Primal Scream. And we were going to play our big first show in England. And we're literally walking down the hall, and I get a phone call from my son. It's in the wintertime. And his mom had just basically thrown him out of the house onto the street with just the clothes on his back. And he had to go find a lady who was walking her dog and use her phone to call me.
Wow.
It was bad. And what does that do to you when you're on the other side of the world and you're just about to walk on stage?
Totally.
So I had my parents went and picked him up, and he's been with me ever since. And then, of course, there was a very long, drawn out nuclear court battle where in the beginning I had this lawyer. He's an older guy. He's a criminal lawyer / family lawyer. And he's dealt with all kinds of stuff, mafia guys, whatever, you name it, he's done it. And he turns to me and he's like, I've never experienced anything like this. This is so out of control, just to give you a perspective. I probably shouldn't go into details.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is somebody who's seen a lot, obviously, right? And lawyers kind of see everything. My wife is actually a lawyer, and so
Oh,
kind of sees everything. She does employment stuff, but yeah. So coming from a lawyer, that means something, right? And I mean, how do you're going through all that stuff, right? And it's obviously a challenge and it's difficult. And like, even if things are amicable, I think that's a really hard time for people. Like, it's just there's a lot to do and back and forth and all this stuff.
yeah.
What what is that like for the kids? Like, in terms of like, how do you like kind of protect them from seeing and experiencing all that, right?
It's really, really hard to protect them from it. I mean, they're going to see and take in what they take in, but the only thing I could do is just be a rock, like be solid,
Yeah.
get them to school on time, make sure they have their lunch, make sure their laundry's done, make sure they're, like all the stuff that you need to do, and make sure it's like clockwork, so that they have a solid base or somebody that they can rely on, which wasn't sort of happening on the other end, which was the complete opposite almost. And you just got to step up
Yeah.
at some point, and just really just be a rock for them,
Yeah.
more than rock and roll, but a rock.
Yeah, more than just rock and roll. Oh, the dog's coming in to visit me. Well, part of what we try to explore on this show is like, what does it mean to be a rad dad? So I'm curious, would you define yourself as a rad dad?
Maybe an odd dad, maybe a
Okay.
weird dad, or I don't know about rad, but maybe. Yeah,
Okay.
I guess. I don't know. I don't have much of an ego, so I'm like, I'm just trying to do my best,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, what is that? Like, how do you define that? Like, I mean, you kind of said it before. You want to be a rock for your kids. You want to do your best. Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, in some ways, I had to retain my own personal identity, and not like I did the whole suburban, drive the Mercedes, get your clothes dry cleaned. You have to deal with all these parents and what they think of you and the impression that makes and how the kids are affected by it. Like I did all of that to the best of my ability, although, it was difficult to sort of, it's not my scene,
Your scene. Yeah, you don't necessarily
Yeah.
feel like you fit in with, the I don't know. I don't want to disparage anybody, but the soccer moms
No,
or
it's,
whatever, right?
yeah, just a different way of looking at life, I think. Like they have their world, and they're important in that world, and you have to deal with a lot of pompous attitudes
Yep.
and people with big egos and stuff. So, and I lucked out. I wound up moving into this church. I live in a big old 1800s church, which suits me perfectly, because then I can set up my studio, continue working, and it's sort of an unusual place to live. So that sort of, you know, made me feel like more myself. And the more I
Yep.
felt like myself, the easier it is for me to sort of take care of the kids and be solid for them and not have to worry about like, oh, what are the Joneses going to think of me if I'm not driving the right car and I'm not, you know what I mean?
Hard not to get mixed up in all that stuff though, right? Like,
Very hard.
and I think, maybe, and I'm just thinking about this now, but like, maybe it's because you're worried about, like, I'm sort of seeing that difference between me and those parents, and do I want my kids to see it, and or do I want them just to think like I'm the same as all those other parents, right? And so what I'm hearing
Yeah.
from you is that you're what makes you unique, what makes you you, like your individuality and your unique perspective. You're a musician, and I know like, um come from a world of, well, I mean, look at Devo, right? It's a commentary on the world, and looking back on your career and the music you've made, it's always been a similar type of vibe, right? A little bit provocative, a little bit
Very similar. Yeah.
of a commentary, right? So that's why you fit with that Devo group. But then when you put yourself in that suburban sort of
Yeah, you're
world,
not
you
in LA. You're in like, some small town, and people
yeah,
look at you funny because you're not wearing a LL Bean or
right.
the the vest and the,
Yeah.
whatever it is that they're wearing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me anyway, I reached a certain age and I've always had a little bit of that, but now I just don't give a shit,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and yeah, like do you feel like so what you were sort of getting at, I think, is that like once you kind of accepted that and you kind of come to terms with that and you get comfortable in your own space, it allows you to be a better parent and community member and all that stuff, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because then people kind of, it's weird. It kind of turns around. They kind of respect you for it,
Yep.
that you actually are being yourself and just being straight up with people and, not putting on a show.
People have a really good sense for that, right? Like I kind of have this theory about like people being genuine, right? And we're really good. I think at least most of us are really good at sensing when people are genuine. So even if you're different, you have different
Right.
things you're interested in or whatever, people sense that you're genuine, and then it eases them, right? It
Right.
and it allows you to
Because
connect a
they know
little
you
bit
don't
better.
care.
Yeah.
You don't care about their judgment or their,
Yeah.
they're looking at you. You don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I'm sure a lot of them have done a lot of things in their lives, and but to me, my world is I've lived all over the world, and I've
Yep.
traveled all over the world. Like I've probably done the United States like over 100 times, and like been to every tiny little town. And my world, that's my world. Their world is the town they live in, and maybe a couple towns out from that, and that's
Yep.
that's the way they see things.
Yeah, so your lens that you look at the world through is a little bit different, right? And so tell me
Yeah.
about your kids. Like what do your kids think about what you do and your lifestyle and the music you make and the art you create?
I think my son he's really into it. I mean, people call him mini me,
Okay.
but he's developing into his own. He's really talented, and we're all really proud of him for his filmmaking, and he's a great musician and really funny. My daughter, I think she digs it, but it's like she just doesn't want to tell her friends, like she doesn't want, she's actually still over in the town that we lived in, which is a really kind of uppity, you know,
Yep.
upper middle class kind of town, which is worse than being in a rich town, because the upper middle class, that there's a certain, strata there where they're just so obnoxious
Just
because
climbing.
yeah, and they're not like the people that I know that are actual millionaires that are really wealthy. You'd never know. They wear jeans and a t-shirt. They don't care. They're rich, you know.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
this is that level right below that. The alpha, a lot of alpha males I had to deal with sports and things like
Yep.
that. So
Yeah, that's tough. So I'm curious. So your son is going into filmmaking. Like, congratulations! You must be, really proud. He's got a scholarship and
oh yeah, I
to
got somebody to make videos for me now.
right, exactly. And so how did you kind of or what role did you have in fostering that interest for him?
I think it's so we have a very large vinyl collection here.
Okay.
And ever since he was little, like we'd watch movies like Kurosawa films or Scorsese and I'd explain some of the shots and stuff to him as ever since he was a kid, we were just watching movies, lots of, I think he saw like Wings of Desire when he was like 10,
Yeah.
and I'm translating some of the stuff for him. But I think he's just in love with cinema. He loves how shots are set up and the mood that they create. Like one of his favorite films we were watching the other night was Taxi Driver.
Yep.
And he's like, Dad, watch this opening scene. Look at the filters that they're using and how cool that is that they cut from this to the rain to with the music and
Yep. It is interesting, like film, and I have to admit, I'm not a huge film guy. So I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I do see a lot of, obviously there's parallels with music, right? Like people who can see that shot and they have a vision for how to make you feel something, right? It's a
right.
lot like, so I'm more of a music guy. It's a lot like when you're like, oh, if we just put a reverb on here just like this, it'll just sound so amazing, right? You didn't
Right.
really do anything crazy, but it just changes the emotion.
The, yeah, and the mood and yeah.
Yeah, right. And so that is really cool. And it's cool how some people have such a good sense of that. Just
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a great way to communicate. You know, you communicate a lot through a picture.
Yeah. I'm going to take you back a little ways. Like your son's 18, you mentioned. So
Yeah.
taking you back 18 years, when you became a dad, what was kind of going on in your life?
Okay, so at that time, I lived in Brooklyn. I was touring with Adam Green, and we were doing these great like summer festival tours. And I had just moved back from LA. I was living with my friend Joan, and it was a great time. It was a little lonely though, because you know, you find yourself like, okay, I'm 30, whatever, you know, but I was touring, so I was busy. And and my ex, who was basically my post high school sweetheart, we'd lived
Okay.
together, and we had broken up around 93. She called me and we had a conversation that, you know, she's like, well, my clock's ticking and I want you to be the dad and we should give it a shot and da 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 da. So I agreed, and I was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. And then
Interesting.
yeah. And then I didn't realize at the time that it was like a setup, but you know, she was already working my parents, and behind, I didn't know, you know, like
Wow.
it was all being pushed in that direction, which is fine. I mean, we have two amazing kids. But yeah, and then we had Luke, and snap, everything just changed, you know.
So what changed? What changed about Josh Hager?
Everything. Well, not everything, but the only way I can describe it, Jeff, the drummer in Devo, just recently had a child.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what's it going to be like? And I was like, all right, picture this. Picture the first time you fell in love, that feeling, that like the butterflies, and I said, now take that and crank it up to 1,000.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, and I still get that when I look at them. It's really kind of funny because the other day I was just looking at my kids and I'm like, wow. And all of a sudden they're like, Dad, what's wrong? You all right? What's wrong with you? Why are you looking at us like that? I'm like, no, no reason. No reason. You know,
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Like sometimes it just does hit you. Like you kind of live your day to day and you don't really think about it day to day, but every once in a while there's, and maybe this is like the film of your life, right? Like it
it
you
is.
see this shot or this moment and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just had it the other day. It's funny that you mentioned it. We're dog sitting this dog, and the kids were outside running around in the backyard, and it was like there was just this moment where they were laughing and running together, and it was, you know,
Yeah.
sun setting, and it was just beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so lucky, right?
This is what it's about.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you realize everything that it took to get to that moment,
yeah,
every other little moment that it took to get there, you know. And then also, then the sadness kind of floods in of like, you're not holding on to that moment, you know,
yeah.
and, you know, so it's a mixed bag, you know.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm interested in that. So like you've actually got a couple members of Devo who've, you know, recently had children. So what's your role in kind of supporting those guys, Jeff and Jerry, and in navigating fatherhood? Is that a role that you play in the band, or is it just sort of
No, it's
supportive
just
or
sort of it. I support them completely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the greatest thing for them. I think, you know, I mean, Jerry's a highly intelligent guy and very, you know, has a lot of empathy. I think it's a really good thing for him. And you know, of course, Jeff's over the moon, and they
yeah.
both have incredible wives, and like they really lucked out, and like it's, you know, a new journey for them.
Did you get that like when you see their babies, like you kind of have that flooding back of memories of when your kids were babies?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I the part I missed the most, I think, is when they were like maybe 4 to 7,
Yeah.
that period. And I think it's a weird thing. I was thinking back then that it seems like it's a perfectly natural point in your life to be reminded of your childhood and the way you thought about things back then. So you're kind of seeing it again through them.
Yep.
And I think it's a good reminder, you know, so that you don't take things too seriously or take yourself too seriously. And,
Yep.
you know, and I'm always sort of like seeing life through there, like, you know, they're in high school, first kiss or whatever. And, you know, you're
Yep.
just like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Except it was the 80s. It was a little cooler, but, you know.
definitely cooler back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is such an interesting thing, right? Just to see, kind of experience their life through their eyes a little bit, right? And actually, someone who is on this podcast, I always go back to it. There's a couple like quotes that people have given me over the years that have really stuck with me, and one that someone said to me was like, you really realize like it's not what you say to your kids. And I think a lot of us think a lot about like saying the right thing and doing exactly the right thing, but
Right.
it's really not about that, but it's about the way they feel, right? And so you talked about that, like being a rock for your kids, and them knowing that like at the end of the day it's just like, yeah, dad's got me, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's way more important than what you say in a specific moment or whatever, right?
Yeah. And leading by example, like, they see you helping somebody out, or like, showing empathy to other people, and being kind, like that sort of stuff, or not taking shit from people.
Yep.
There's a way to do it where it's not like, aggressive, but just, trying to teach them by example. And I think as a person, since I've had kids, I think I've changed a lot as a person, because of it. Like
So
somebody that would have known me before I had kids probably wouldn't know me now, kind of thing.
would be like, oh, that's that guy.
Yeah,
um
that's that guy. I thought he was scary,
so what like dig into that a little bit for me, like what has changed about you?
I think definitely my level of patience, and also like during that whole time that I had kids, I had taken up studying kung fu with a guy in Boston, a good friend of mine. And that also was at the same time, that was my way of going to the gym, because I'm not a big workout guy, but it also taught me about how to steady your mind and sort of like um step out of situations before reacting to them, or reacting to them immediately without thinking, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Naturally. But yeah, it's just a definitely more patient, um definitely more responsible, because when you're on your own and you're living in a park, you're just,
Yep.
you're winging it, and you can't just wing it for the kids. You got to really do it.
Well, you can. Some people try, right? And I don't think it
Yeah.
goes that well.
There's a
Um,
time and a place for it, I guess, too.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural to obviously change, and patience is a big one that I think a lot of people talk about, right? That you just learn to not be so impulsive and reactive. You just kind of need to watch the situation, let things happen, let kids make their mistakes, and
Right.
and not freak out, and it's all going to be okay. So does give you that perspective on the world too. Like I think you learn that with your kids, your little kids, and it
Yeah, and
works
not
so
not
well in the
being a
rest of your life too.
not being a yeller. You know what I mean? Like I think with my kids, I don't yell at them. I've never hit them or anything like that. But I think it's gotten to the point where they just don't want to disappoint me,
Hmm.
which is good. That means they have a level of respect for you. And I think that's important too, that they have that respect for parents, where they don't want to disappoint you, and they want to do the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, how do you build that in your kids? Like a child who's respectful of you, a child who, um, yeah, like I guess I'm curious, how do you create a child that has that sort of empathy or whatever that is? That maybe it is just respect, but is there
It's a
something
good
specific you
question.
did?
I don't think so. I think maybe I mean, if I'm mad, I get quiet, and they know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's almost like, not that they're intimidated by me, because I'm not going to do anything, but it's like, they don't want to let me down, and
Yeah.
I don't want to let them down. And, it's like a mutual respect, I think. And I think that's kind of key, where you're not talking down to the kids and treating them like they're idiots, like, but you're also not treating them like a buddy.
Yeah, that's the art of it, right? Is like you need to have that there needs to be some like I don't want to say power dynamic, but there needs to be that understanding of like, hey, yeah, I'm the dad, I'm in charge,
Right.
but And I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday or the day before. Like, I'm not gonna come down on you just to come down on you. Like, if there's something we're gonna, if there's some discipline or something that happens here, you're gonna know why, right? So that
Right.
it's clear, at least
Right.
for the kids, right? Like why that's happening. But that is a hard thing to do, especially like so my kids are a little bit younger. So sometimes like you want to talk to them and explain things to them, but their brains aren't really there.
Right. They're not
Like,
ready for it.
yeah, to like fully understand the context. They're just like, why can't I go out and play? I just want to go.
And I think the hardest part is, let's say you get annoyed with your kids, but you're realizing that you're not actually annoyed with your kids. You're annoyed at the person you just argued on Facebook with, or the car broke down or whatever, and you're just in a bad mood, and you got to stop yourself from taking it out on your kids. You know what I mean? And that's something I've learned over the years to like, okay, why am I mad? Okay, it's not them, it's something else. Okay, give me a minute, reset,
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Kung Fu. I've got a really good friend, lives in the neighborhood here, and he's a Sifu at a Kung Fu school. And
Oh,
he
wow.
actually,
What style, do you know?
I want to, okay, I might be getting this wrong. So forgive me, Mike, if you're listening, but is it Chow Lao? Maybe? Is that
Okay.
right?
I don't know.
Maybe? Chow Lao?
Moyat, maybe?
Nope, that's not it.
I studied Wing Chun.
Oh, so maybe, okay, maybe it's Wing Chun. Maybe Chow Lao's the name of the school.
Okay.
I'll find out for you and I'll send
You
it.
got to hook us up. We got to have a rad dad's like, kung fu session.
I've actually thought about having him on the podcast before, because I think it has had a huge impact on his life, Kung Fu, and his family actually all do Kung Fu with him at the school.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's like a whole family thing, but we always go to they always do like for Chinese New Year, they do a performance actually at West Edmonton Mall that we were talking about before. But it's
Yeah.
like out in the ice rink, they cover it up with boards or whatever, and then they have this big performance there, and it is so amazing to see, like from the young kids that are part of the school up to the Sifus and stuff, and you can just tell the kind of the discipline involved with it, and it's mesmerizing actually to watch. I don't know enough about it. I really should give it a shot sometime because I can see how the impact it's had on his family too, his kids, like just in terms of how their ability to deal with things that come up, and all those kinds of things. I know
Yeah. And the more
some of it comes from
confidence
that.
you have, like, I think the real art of kung fu is not fighting. If you're
Yeah,
really good at it, if you're really good at kung fu, you never get in a fight,
yeah,
because you don't have to. You just go around the problem or whatever, solve it
yeah,
a different way.
yeah. It's really a mindset. So yeah, I'll look it up, and I'll get that info from Mike and I'll send it to you because
Okay.
yeah, he's a really interesting guy. So yeah, that's neat how that has kind of factored in as well. Like that probably gave you a lot of skills and abilities to navigate some of the challenges of parenting, I would think.
It did. It actually helped. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, yeah, it also helped me get through the Times Square New York City show where I broke my knee on stage. So
When
I
did
still
that
have one.
happen?
That was my third show with Devo.
You
And
broke your leg on stage?
yeah, during Uncontrollable Urge, second, third song in, crack, and did the rest of the set on one leg, you know.
And Dave Grohl got all that attention for him making it through the show. I never heard anything about yours.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's on. The fun is my friend sent me this video. You know how like there's a video of like the kid standing in front of the TV doing Bruce Lee moves and stuff? He sent me a video of a kid doing my moves.
Oh,
Like
really?
falling in the certain spot on Uncontrollable Urge and getting up and
Crazy. And so after that show, you're like straight to the hospital sort of thing. Is that what happened?
yeah, right from the stage to the hospital. And then I mean I still have to exercise this knee and all that stuff.
Crazy. Crazy. I want to ask you too, like you kind of mentioned that this was a discussion that you had with your ex about becoming a father. Like, did you always know that you wanted to be a dad?
Um it's not one of those things where I always knew I wanted to. I kind of took life at the time like as it came at me. And I think I was just recovering from like a really sort of bad return of Saturn, 28-year-old, like the whole world was just pulled out from under me, you know, for various reasons. And I was like putting myself, like I basically went and lived in Nashville for a while. Then I lived in a big loft in downtown LA and by myself, and like kind of just put myself back together again, you know.
Yeah.
And then moved to Brooklyn, and I was like, okay, I'm back together, and what's the next thing? Okay, I'm on tour. This is great. I'm doing what I love doing, getting paid to do it, and I'm living with my friends who I hadn't seen in a long time. Um, so I wasn't really thinking about it, you know, and I wasn't really thinking about it even up until I saw Luke, you know.
Yeah.
But it was like the minute, you know, like something just goes click, and
Yeah.
it's got to be primal, but it was like everything changed.
Yeah. That's so neat to hear that. Like I think that's the case for a lot of people, right? And maybe especially men. Like if I think, you know, women generally probably think more about like what's that going to be like? Like there's a physical
Well, yeah,
part of it for
yeah, they
them, right?
have, yeah,
But a lot of dads, it's like, you know, like that day your child is born is like, boom, okay, this is real now, right?
yeah.
Um,
And before
so
that, you're like, do, I'm just going through life, like, you know, yeah,
yeah,
you
and
know.
you have to like at that moment, everything changes, like you said. Are you able to talk about what your relationship was like with your dad? Is like,
Yeah. Oh, my parents are great. My parents are still together, Joan and Howard, and they're the best. I had an incredibly wonderful childhood. You know, we didn't have much money in the beginning. I grew up in a part of Long Island called Mastic.
okay,
And then when we were 10, my dad and mom are very intelligent people, and dad wound up working for NASA, and we went to Houston for a while. Then he started his own company. He was one of the like Siri. He was one of the pioneers of that. He was one of
get
the
out of
first
town.
guys. Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
He has all sorts of patents, and like he's the best. And he's my biggest fan. Like you can't go to a supermarket and be in line with him without him like very loudly going, "So, when are you going on tour again, Josh?
Yeah.
Is Paul still out with Miley?" You know, and you're like, Dad, come on, I just want to buy eggs. Get out of here.
That's
But
awesome.
and my mom's really sweet. She's great, super well read, and they're great grandparents. That's another thing too. We got that to look forward to.
Right.
We get
Yeah,
to
so
do it
it's
again, but not have the responsibility.
yeah, if I take like my dad and my wife's parents, like seems like it's a lot of like fun and handing out candy and everyone's
Looking
happy all the
good.
time. Yeah,
Nobody's mad at
exactly.
you.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, tell me about that. Like what's it like seeing your parents become grandparents?
Oh, it's like the joy of the world to them. It's like you just gave them the best Christmas present ever.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I remember it was like that with my grandfather, because my grandfather, my mom was an only child and he never had sons. And I was really close to her side of the family, you know. And he treated us like his sons, my brother and I,
Yeah.
took us to baseball games and all that stuff. And, you know, it was great.
Yeah. It's neat having that connection. Not everybody you know, gets to have that, right? That connection with their
Right.
grandparents, right? Whether it's, you know, due to age or, you know, illness or distance. So do you live close to your parents
Yeah, they
still?
live about a half hour away.
Okay, so that's nice. So then for the kids, you know, they get to
Yeah.
see the grandparents and the grandparents get to see the kids and the grandparents probably get to help out a little bit too, which is nice for you. I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
assuming, but I know that's something that's important to our family too. Like, you know, and we tell them all the time, like it's a huge help.
Oh yeah, especially with the touring. When I go on tour, you know, they got to get to school, and you
Yeah.
know, and it's kind of fun that you know, all the work that we do around the church, like, you know, putting up this wall behind me or whatever. My dad loves that. So he comes,
Okay.
it's like the best. He loves going to Home Depot and chatting with the people there, and
Yeah.
so it keeps him busy.
Your dad sounds like a cool guy. has your relationship with your dad sort of changed, or is there, as time has gone on, or and maybe as you became a father, did anything change about your relationship with your dad?
Um, I don't think much changed. I remember he told me though, he said, I've never seen you this happy before, he was happy that I was happy,
I love
when
that.
the kids were born. But other than that, we've always had a great relationship. He's really into flying like model airplanes and
Okay.
stuff. So we'd take the kids and we'd go out, and Luke would be out there with the remote control flying these, 4-foot wingspan, remote control planes. And dad took him to get his pilot's license, and he got to take off and land in a local airport here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so does that come from him, like working for NASA? Is that where that kind of came from, or was he into flying
I
and
think
stuff before that?
I think he was into it before that. He was in the Navy in the 60s. And yeah, I think ever since he was a kid, and I got that bug too, because there was a period where he was going to be the VP over at Lucasfilm when I
Wow.
was like 12, and that's all I wanted to do was build fine scale. Like, I was psychotic about it. I'd take like a Millennium Falcon and I'd put
Yeah.
like fiber optic lights in the cockpit, and that changed color, and like that's all it
Wow.
was like a choice between playing guitar and becoming a professional model maker,
Yep.
and guitar won. But and he was going to go work at Lucasfilm, and I remember when he went there for the interview, they were just doing Indiana Jones, and they were doing some scene with a plane crashing into a mountain or something. But yeah, he's great. We always go to the Comic Cons together and stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. That's nice that you kind of, yeah, you have that friendship. It sounds like you've had a really strong sort of friendship throughout the years. So it's
Yeah.
nice to have that close by too. That's really cool. Um, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about what you're up to these days. So, like, tell me what's happening with your own projects and things you're working on. What's new with Devo? Anything sort of coming down the pipe? This is your chance to brag.
Well, actually, it's a good time because over the last, so I had a project called Garvy J, which was like early 2000s, and I'd recorded a couple records for that. And for whatever reason, I just was like, I don't know. Why release it? Nobody cares, whatever. So stuff's been sitting on the hard drive. And then I've been working on new stuff that's finished up. And then there's a bunch of side projects that have all finished up at the same time. So there's going to be a big flood. There's going to be a big flood of music. I'm going to be putting stuff out every week now. So I
Awesome.
decided to take Garvy J from the beginning to the end, and I'm going to release one. Instead of doing a record, I'm just going to do one song every couple weeks and put it out. And then when that's done, I'll put out the new stuff. And then there's a side project called Moist Towelette, which is like a
Okay.
Prince type thing. And there's
Awesome.
another side project, which is one of my favorites. It's called It's No Game. And I'm doing that with Gordon Zacharias, or Fan Modine, he's known as, and Joan Wasser. She's on that. I don't know if she's that involved anymore, but she recorded a bunch of stuff on that. And then what else? My ambience, there's an entire catalog of ambient brainwave music,
Yeah.
which were experiments I did with a friend of mine in binaural beating and manipulating brainwaves to induce trance states and all sorts of math and very mathematical stuff. So that's gonna. I just put out a couple little teasers
Yeah.
of that recently.
Yeah, I saw that.
And what else? And I mix a lot of records. So if anybody needs a record mixed, you hit me up.
Yeah.
But that's what I spend a lot of time doing, is mixing other artists or producing other artists. Or I haven't done the producing thing that much in the last probably 3 or 4 years, though.
And most of that you're doing kind of from your home studio,
Yeah, either
right?
here, or if I need to track larger, I'll go to a friend's studio. But I mostly just, yeah, I sort of a one-man submarine down here with all the gear and the keyboards and this is just this room. There's a whole other room behind me that's like a big room with drums and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. So we have a lot of room here.
That's cool. And so because you're in this big building, this big church, like you can probably make lots of noise too, and get away
Well,
with
it's
it.
great because I moved in And the neighbor to my left turns out Matt Henderson. He's a this crazy, incredible guitar player. Like he's like Robert Fripp's only certified teacher in the United States. Great guy, tons of gear. Like we just, we just had a bro love affair,
Yeah.
like, hey, what are you? He's like, I'm so glad you moved in here. And then on the other side is it's just horses. It's a horse farm that goes around the
Okay.
whole thing. So I just walk outside and there's horses and
That's so cool. It must be a very creative location for you. Like not even just the room but the building and the
yeah,
neighborhood, right?
everything. It's beautiful here. I mean, I've lived in LA and I've lived everywhere, New York. And here it's just green. The people in the neighborhood are really nice. Nobody complains about anything. And I could still go to LA. My brother has a place in Toluca Lake, so I go there and stay, when we're doing Devo stuff. And I know, as far as Devo, I know there's I can't really talk about exactly what's happening, but there are shows coming up, probably a lot more shows next year.
Okay.
And not so sure about recordings. There's stuff. I know Mark's going through transferring a big transferring of all of the analog tape. So he's finding things that he's like, oh, maybe we could work, fix this up.
Cool.
So I think there's a lot of options there. And Jerry, I work with Jerry a lot, and Jerry's got a couple new songs that we did with Steve Bartek and Alex Casal, like Bob's son, who's an amazing guy, by the way. He's playing bass on it, and I think I'm going to mix that when I get back out. We're doing a show September 27th outside of LA, Ahuna Fest or something. And we'll probably hopefully finish that song then.
Awesome.
I think that's everything.
Lots of things coming from your camp, which is really cool, really exciting. So yeah, be really neat to see the revival of some of that music from 20 years ago, right? Sort of see the light of day. So that's really neat. Cool.
Yeah, and I started a label. I was like, I've done the whole label thing so many times. Like the Shadow Party was a major label release. And you realize like, like, all right, so I'm giving up this huge percentage of my stuff for what? For anything that you could do yourself now.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot more artists thinking about that and doing that, and there's more opportunity to get involved in that process, right? Like it used to be there was a stranglehold by the major labels, right?
The gatekeepers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Control all of that. So it's actually neat to see, like, and I think fans really like that idea too, that like, hey, more of my money buying this album or whatever is going to that artist.
Yeah,
right?
and even merch. Like the other day, there was a bunch of those spam bots on my page with fake Josh Hager t-shirts.
Yeah.
The best part was I'm playing keyboards and it says Josh Hager guitar underneath. So I was like, wait a second, why don't I just make my own shirts and then I could just spam my own posts? So that's what I did. I set up an Etsy shop with a drop ship t-shirt company and did my own designs. You just upload them. I'm like, oh, you can do that now. And you can load a song into CD Baby and just hit a button, and for $10 it just goes all over the world
everywhere.
Instantly. Yeah.
I know. It is cool. And I think like I said, I think fans are really excited about that too. Like I think that's kind of where it feels like things are moving a little bit in the music industry. At least it is for me. I'm like one of these super fan guys. Like when I like your band, when I like your stuff, I'm following everything you do. And I love that experience of like the artist connecting back with the fans. Like I know a lot do like Patreon, or maybe they get on their Instagram or Facebook or whatever, but that's really cool, I think, and really meaningful for people too. So using some of those platforms to connect with people is kind of a neat way of doing something different from the historical kind of model of music distribution, right?
And now you could do, like, I could literally sit there in my bed and make a video for a song. And I could do the artwork for the record on my phone, like, and then I can just upload it. And then I could, it's like, it's all immediate. It's all right there. It's so easy.
Yeah, and you can just reach your audience that you need to so quickly. And so, I mean, there's an art to it, right? Like I shouldn't trivialize it. There's a lot of artists out there that are trying and can't reach
Yeah.
that audience, but I do think there are some really unique ways that you can connect. Like, there's some guys that I follow that they do a podcast, and you can subscribe, and you kind of get like the behind the scenes like discussion about this album or that song or whatever.
Right.
And that's cool for the fan. Like, we'll pay for that. We want more
Yeah.
stuff, right?
See the band in the studio, or
Yeah.
yeah, it's really I know people complain about the times and the music industry and but I think this is the most exciting time, because the thing is that music doesn't suck. There's more of it, but if you dig, you'll find stuff that is mind-blowing. I mean, there's
Yep.
so many great artists out there right now that you probably never heard of, because for whatever reason they've never come across your page or whatever.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
there's some
totally.
real, you know,
Or they're just like doing their thing and not trying to get a huge reach, and they're just making incredible stuff, and maybe they have a day job or whatever, and so you can find these gems, right?
there's some of them, like there's this guy, I think his name is on Instagram is Funky Drummer.
Okay.
And I'm just floored by this guy. He's just laying down like old Minneapolis funk, like the good, solid, nasty funk. And the guy's got like, I'm watching his page. He's got like 2 likes, 3
Yeah,
likes. I'm like, why is this guy not massive?
I know. Yeah, so many talented people out there, and it is a way, it does open the gates for those people to get out to a wider audience. So it is cool.
Yeah.
Josh, I really appreciate your time today. It's been really neat talking with you and talking about, what it means to be a rad dad. I'm wondering, do you have any advice for dads out there listening?
Advice pertaining to anything in particular, or?
Whatever, let's say it's a new dad, right? Someone who's about to become a dad. What
Okay.
would you tell
Get a
that
lawyer.
person?
Get a good lawyer. I'm just kidding.
Lawyer
Sorry.
up.
Lawyer up now. Collect every single text message
Keep
and
your
every single
receipts.
email. No, I'd say soak in it. Like really, really just enjoy every second, because it goes by really fast, and you won't even know it. Next thing you know, the kid will be graduating and off to college. But if you don't just savor it, just savor every minute that you're with them, and listen to them, and be a good example, and be the most solid version of yourself you can possibly be. That's my advice.
I think that's great advice. The kids are watching, right? They're watching what you're doing. So, um, awesome. Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate it today. It's been great talking with you, and congratulations on all the stuff that's about to come out into the world. So maybe we'll try and time this episode with some of that if that works out.
Yeah, I think the first one's coming out Monday.
Oh,
And it's a
okay.
song called "What If It All Works Out," which is my favorite Garvy J song, because it's got a little, some songs you write and some songs are written through you, and they have that little bit of magic.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
Okay, interesting. What if it all works out?
What if it all works out? No question mark, though.
Okay. What if it all
It's a
works out?
it's
Well,
a it's a it's a mantra for reality creation.
I mean, it's a good metaphor for our discussion today too, right? So that's
Yeah.
really cool. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, great
All
talking
right,
with you.
man.
Wish you all the best.
Thanks. And if you're if we're nearby and you want to come to a show, let me know.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I would love to see you guys again for sure.
All right.